Welcome to YRMC's Healthy Conversations. I'm Cheryl van Demark. Today's topic is on practicing self-compassion. So we got an experience with that this morning with our technical difficulties. So thank you very much for hanging in there with us. All right. So I work with the YRMC Pendleton Center as a physical therapist, and I'm also a certified yoga therapist. And my main role is working with the YRMC self-care program for patients with chronic pain. So let's start with talking about what compassion is, and this is my way of explaining it, that it's about recognizing that suffering is present either in oneself or others. And then, this is the key piece, it's coupled with a heartfelt desire to do something to change that suffering, right? To act in some way. So suffering is kind of a big word, but if it helps to think of suffering as anything we're experiencing where we feel some resistance to what is happening in the moment. Okay, so it's just think of it more as like a rub or a resistance or a friction around whatever is happening within you or around you. Okay, so that is about the present moment, right? What's happening now. But it also extends to kind of going back in time and, you know, rehashing, reworking things that have happened in the past. And then the big one is looking ahead, anticipating, you know, the unknown of, you know, what may happen yet that could cause some sort of resistance or friction. Okay. All right, so there's a simple acronym that we're going to use to actually engage in a practice of self-compassion, all right? Because it's one thing to learn about something and it's another thing to actually practice with something so that you truly integrate it. So this little acronym is one that is from the work of psychotherapist Cheryl, and I use it in our self-care program for chronic pain. So the acronym is RAIN. So there's the R, and if only we could get some rain around here, right? We're all hoping for the monsoons. And it stands for these four things. So the recognition or recognizing, allowing, investigating, and nurturing. So we're going to go through those in an actual practice. So the first one, recognize, has to do with just being present in the moment to recognize what is happening within you and around you and between yourself and other people. So in order to take that step of recognizing, you have to show up, right? You have to be present to yourself. So that means that you need to put your mind and your body in the same place at the same time. That's basically a very first step in any sort of stress management training as well. Okay, so mind and body, same place, same time. Now, we're neurologically wired in such a way that we can take advantage of that wiring by what we choose to pay attention to. And that's what's represented on the screen here. We have a map of the body in the brain in the somatosensory and somatomotor cortices of the brain. And that map is such that we have more incoming information present to us in the hands, the feet, the face, the tongue, the floor of the pelvis, right? And your facial expression. So there's lots of input coming in. So if you're going to take this first step of recognize, to be present, you can focus your attention on one of those places. So I'm just going to talk you through this. It doesn't take very long. So you can put your feet on the floor and sit fairly evenly and upright but comfortable, non-rigidly, right? So you get a comfortable erect posture. Feet on the earth, just feel the position of each of your toes, all right? Just register that, my feet, my toes. Feel how your seat is positioned. Are you evenly weight-bearing on both thighs and both buttocks? And so you register that, and then you can move on to whatever position your hands are in now. Just feel your hands and then each of your fingers Just sort of a roll call of locating these body areas. And then from the hands, you can move up to the head, and just noticing the position of your jaw, your lips, your tongue, corners of your lips. It's nice to invite a smile. And then moving into just feeling your own facial expression around your brow and your eyes, and endeavoring to soften the brow and soften both the inner and outer corners of your eyes. That kind of goes with a nice, easy smile. All right. And so that is the step of presencing, so that you can recognize what you might be feeling in this moment in time. Okay? So then the next part of the RAIN acronym is the A for allow. This is a big one. Allowing whatever you're feeling to be there, right? So not resisting it, giving it permission, whatever it is, right? It's allowed to be there, okay? So it's a step of not judging your own feelings or thoughts as good or bad, but simply noticing and allowing them to be with you, because they are, okay? All right. Then the next part is an investigation. And we essentially don't ever have a conscious thought without having an associated something happen in the body that registers or expresses that thought. All right. So the investigate piece means to tune in to your body and feel like, when I allow whatever I'm recognizing is there to be there, what does that feel like at this moment in my body? Like, how does it change maybe how I'm sitting here? How does it influence my ability to hold my attention to whatever this is? How does it change my breath? Does it cause my shoulders to rise? Those sorts of things that are unique to each of us. So you just undertake this curious and kind investigation of what you're allowing to be present, based on taking that moment to pause and recognize what's happening. Okay. And then the last piece is nurturance. Okay. Just to nurture yourself. So based on what is happening, right, based on the investigation that is going on, it can give you some information about what might really be needed to calm, to soothe, to nurture in this moment. And that's the compassionate action, okay? So that's unique for all of us, whatever each of us needs to do that feels nurturing for us, whether it's time in nature, whether it's engaging in a devotional reading, whether it's taking some quiet time in prayer or meditation, whether it's listening to some wonderful music or reading poetry, like whatever it may be, or dig in a ditch. Sometimes, right, we just need to do a physical exertion of some type to kind of work through whatever it is that we are feeling, right? So that's the verb part of compassion, a compassionate action that you take with intention to nurture. Okay, all right. So the practice of self-compassion is the idea of doing these steps, like taking some time with regularity, right? Taking some time with regularity, making a practice of going through those RAIN steps, okay? Because we get better at whatever we practice. That's neurologically, biologically true. Whatever we do the most, we're very bioplastic, very neuroplastic human beings, all right? So it's nice to cultivate the ability to be kind to oneself. And the practice of compassion needs to start with us, all right? As we treat ourselves, so then we tend to treat others, which is sort of a reversal of the golden rule, okay? So let's just take the last couple of moments in this presentation before we go to questions. And do a few minutes of quiet practice of rain, okay? And this is a very healing type of practice. Working with self-compassion is about, ultimately about our own healing, right? And healing is an innate part of being a human being. And oftentimes we don't really think about what it is that we can invest in that cultivates healing, and not just health or well-being or fitness or whatnot, but really what helps us to heal. So let's just take this last minute, place your hands on your own heart. Just this simple gesture has been researched as something that can help us to access self-compassion. Right, and I'm closing my eyes. I encourage you to either do that or lower your gaze and just recognize what is on your heart in this moment. Allow whatever that is to be fully present. Exclude nothing. Investigate how when you allow that, there's an immediate response in the body. Get familiar with those responses within yourself in a kind and curious way. And then you can just ask the question, like, how can I nurture this, whatever it is? Right? And maybe you're feeling amazingly loving and grateful today. You can nurture, whatever is present. It doesn't have to be a problematic type of thing. Right? You can nurture joy. All right. You can release your hands. Simple practice. Let the rain fall. Let the rain fall. And we have some questions.
Yes, Cheryl. Thank you. Is self-compassion selfish?
That is a very pertinent question. And in our culture, there tends to be a feeling that it can be. But when we understand that we practice self-compassion primarily so that we can extend it through us to others, then that dispels the notion that it's selfish.
Okay. John in Prescott would like to know, is self-compassion a new practice?
No, it's quite an ancient practice. It's just that modern science is starting to research the neural mechanisms by which these practices seem to put us in a greater state of comfort that enhances our well-being. We want to know why in science, right? But it's quite a long-standing practice.
I see we've got a question here from Bridget. She's in Tempe, and she wants to know, are there ways that I can generate feelings of compassion within myself?
Sure. So the primary or a primary way is to take yourself through the practice that we just did, which is, one that helps you to first acknowledge what we are feeling. So, it's kind of human nature to wish to avoid anything that's uncomfortable, right? But we don't really avoid those things. We just sort of push them to different parts of our nervous system until we're prepared to deal with them. So you can really help yourself be compassionate by employing these types of practices where you just attune to what you're actually thinking and feeling and befriending whatever it may be. And that process is one that is extending love and kindness to yourself. And when you do that, then you feel what we feel when we are in acts of compassion.
Okay. This is a great question from Stephen Paulden. He wants to know, he says, will digging deep into self-compassion make me feel sad?
Well, certainly it can, right? Under the idea that we allow whatever is present, the good, the bad, the ugly, right? But again, once we are are able to kind of bear witness to what is on our own hearts and minds, it helps bring it up to a more conscious level that we can then just work through it, in a better way. So whether that is, working through sadness, or whether that is working through nervousness, or whether that's working through, trying to stay self-motivated towards pursuit of whatever, holds the most meaning and value and purpose in your life. It serves all of those things.
Okay. See, we have a question here from Brittany in Prescott Valley. She says, does practicing self-compassion have any health benefits?
Well, that is being studied at this time. We know that working with practices that are designed to generate self-compassion, by studying the neural mechanisms, we can see that self-compassion practices activate certain sections of our nervous system that then generate those feelings of loving kindness, and those things feel good in the moment, right? So we know that it's a pretty immediately accessible, felt experience. But then whether or not those experiences become like behavioral traits, that's a different kind of scientific question. So I would say that it's under investigation. So in the short term, it's, certainly something that gives you at least a present moment experience of well-being. And, I can tell you from personal practice that it really does set a certain tone in the day for my own heart, and then how I can work with the people I work with in my workplace, and with patients, and with my husband, all of that. So it with repetition, it has definite influences on how you move through the day.
See, I've got a question here from Betty. She's in Chino, and she says, how can I expect self-compassion to change my relationships with the people who are important in my life?
Well, this is where it gets a little like less sciencey and more anecdotal in my response to that. The teachings around self-compassion tell us that we typically are our own worst critic, and the more self-critical and self-evaluative, self kind of ruminating that we are, the more that then becomes not only how we look at ourselves, but we turn that around and we see some of those things in others. So it absolutely begins to soften your inner critic, and basically by making you attentive to the fact that that inner critic is there and almost continually part of one's inner dialogue. So but we need an inner critic. It's what helps us learn and helps us grow. So it's not like something to condemn. It's more like what tone of voice and what messages is the inner critic part of our mind, dialoguing with us about through the day in ways that changes our reactivity to whatever is happening and whoever we're interacting with.
Mary came through, and she'd like to know the best way to get more involved. What's the best way to get more involved in self-compassion activities in addition to RAIN?
Oh, well, there are a number of resources that are at the end of this presentation. But first, in the order of our slides, working with self-compassion is a large part of the YRMC program directed towards self-care for people experiencing chronic pain. The research has told us that there's often a significant loss in self-compassion in this population. So it's a big feature of this. So you can join us for this program and learn about it. But in addition to that, there are these resources. These are, researchers. It's quite a hot topic. These websites are particularly layperson friendly to have, guided meditations, to have readings. So I would say read, learn, but then bottom line is practice. Okay. Yeah. RAIN is just one handy acronym, but essentially just becoming more self-observant through your whole day, every day, and checking in with yourself and checking in with thoughts and feelings on a pretty regular basis. Once you do it often, it really becomes a positive habit.
Yeah. Lynn in Prescott Valley would like to know, what tips do you have for using self-compassion techniques to counteract feelings of beating myself up?
Well, as I said, we start working with compassion by recognizing where suffering or resistance or rub or friction may be present. So if you are someone who recognizes that you frequently engage in self-talk that feels like you're not befriending yourself, right? That is something that calls for us to be compassionate towards ourselves. And so then that compassion starts with becoming very present to what you're feeling, like catching yourself in the act of the thing you wish to change. And I say catching yourself in the act, but I don't mean that in a bad way. It's sort of a wow, I just used my attentional faculties and I noticed that this is happening. Because without noticing that it's happening, you can do nothing to change it. Right? So we practice basic mindfulness techniques of self-observation, of thoughts, feelings, movements, postures, etc., to just really learn the mind-body relationship. And it's also a body-mind relationship. It works, it's bi-directional. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One more question here. How much do I have to practice self-compassion to actually experience its benefits? Would it be, once a day, twice a week, once a month?
Well, that is also a kind of dosage, if you will, scientific question to again change this experience from one that is experienced in the moment. So I can tell you that just the first time you practice it, you will have an experience of self-compassion just by focusing on it, right? But to practice at a frequency that allows you to feel like you are moving through the world as a more compassionate person, that again there's lots of different study models happening around how long does this take to be able to really incorporate it. And there's mixed information about that, but basic mindfulness practices that are a piece of compassion practices, basic mindfulness practices show change in subjects within a few hours of practice, right? Yeah. So again, we're highly changeable creatures. So work for positive change. All right. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and we will continue these healthy conversations, and you can find them on the YRMC healthconnect.org. All right. Have a beautiful day.